Darkness greeted her as she regained consciousness. Cold, metallic walls enclosed the space, a stark contrast to the warm sunlight she had last seen on Earth. Her arms and legs were bound, cold metal restraints digging into her skin, reminding her of her helplessness. She struggled against them, but it was futile. The silence was deafening, broken only by the faint hum of machinery, a sound that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Her name was Evelyn. Once a scientist, a brilliant mind working for the future of humanity. Now, she was a prisoner, far from the world she once knew, held captive by a species she had yet to fully comprehend. She couldn't recall how she had ended up here. The memories of her abduction were vague and blurred. All she could remember was a blinding light, an overwhelming force pulling her into the unknown. The door to her cell slid open, and she braced herself for what was to come. The figure standing in the doorway was unlike anything she had seen before. Tall, with elongated limbs and skin that shimmered like liquid metal. Its eyes, cold, calculating, seemed to pierce right through her. "You are awake," it said, its voice emotionless, mechanical. "It is time." Evelyn didn't respond. Fear gripped her, but she refused to let it show. Whatever they wanted from her, she wouldn't make it easy for them. But the figure didn't seem interested in her defiance. Instead, it approached her with precise, measured steps, its gaze never leaving her face. "We have observed your kind," it continued. "You possess qualities that are desirable." Evelyn's mind raced. What qualities? What could they possibly want from her? Her thoughts were cut short as the restraints around her limbs released with a soft click. She was free to move, but there was no escape. The alien gestured towards the doorway. "Come with me." She had no choice. Slowly, reluctantly, she rose to her feet, her body weak from confinement. The figure led her down a narrow corridor, the walls pulsing with a dim, alien light. Every step she took felt heavier than the last, her mind swirling with questions. Where were they taking her? What did they want? After what felt like an eternity, they arrived at a large chamber. The walls were lined with complex machinery, tubes and wires intertwining in a chaotic display of alien technology. At the center of the room was a large, translucent pod, its surface rippling like water. Evelyn's heart raced. Something was terribly wrong. "This," the figure said, gesturing towards the pod, "is the beginning of a new era. You will be the key to our future." Before she could react, she felt a sharp pain in her neck. Her vision blurred, and the last thing she saw before darkness claimed her once again was the pod opening, as if waiting to engulf her. Pain. It was the first sensation she registered as she drifted back to consciousness. Her body felt heavy, as if it no longer belonged to her. There was a throbbing deep inside her skull, a dull pulse that matched the rhythm of the strange, metallic hum surrounding her. Evelyn tried to move but found that her limbs were restrained once again. This time, though, the bindings were not cold metal. They were softer, almost organic, as if she were entwined in living tissue. She blinked, her vision blurry, and struggled to make sense of the world around her. She was no longer in the cell. The room was larger, filled with more of the alien machines she had glimpsed earlier. Tubes of various sizes snaked their way from the walls and ceiling, some attached to her body, pumping an unknown substance into her veins. The translucent pod she had seen before now surrounded her, the liquid-like surface occasionally rippling as if it were alive. A soft hiss echoed through the room as the door slid open, and the same figure from before entered, accompanied by two others. They moved with the same calculated precision, their shimmering forms gliding silently across the floor. "She is adapting," one of the figures said, its voice more mechanical than the first. "The human body responds well to the infusion." Infusion? Evelyn's mind reeled. She tried to speak, to ask what they had done to her, but her throat was dry, and the words refused to come. Her body felt strange, distant, as if she were disconnected from herself. Every movement felt foreign, as though she were inhabiting a shell that no longer functioned the way it should. "The process is nearing completion," the first figure said, stepping closer to inspect her. "Soon, she will no longer be human." The words hit her like a physical blow. No longer human? What had they done? What were they turning her into? You possess a unique genetic code, the figure continued, speaking as if she were a mere specimen to be studied. Humanity has evolved to survive, to adapt. Your body's ability to merge with our biology makes you the perfect candidate for this experiment. Evelyn's heart raced. They were changing her, altering her very essence. She struggled against the restraints, panic rising in her chest. But it was no use. The alien machinery held her fast, and the transformation, whatever it was, had already begun. Her mind raced with possibilities, trying to understand what they were doing. She had spent years studying genetics and evolutionary biology, but this was beyond anything she had ever imagined. The concept of hybridization between species was theoretically possible, but to force it upon a living being? It was unthinkable. You will be the first of a new kind, the second figure said, its cold, metallic voice cutting through her thoughts. A fusion of human resilience and our superior biology. Together, we will create a new race, stronger than either of us alone. Evelyn wanted to scream, to protest, but the words never came. Her body convulsed, a sharp pain shooting through her veins as the infusion continued. She could feel the changes happening inside her, her cells shifting, adapting to the foreign material being introduced. Every part of her felt like it was being rewritten, reshaped into something else. Her vision blurred again, but this time she didn't fight it. As the darkness crept in, she found herself wondering what she would become when she awoke, if she would still be herself at all. When Evelyn awoke, she no longer felt the cold, sterile touch of the machinery. Instead, there was a warmth, a pulsating life force that flowed through her veins, unlike anything she had ever experienced. The restraints were gone, yet her body remained motionless, frozen in place by something deeper than physical bonds. It was as though she were tethered to the very walls of this alien facility, connected in ways she couldn't yet comprehend. She blinked, her vision adjusting to the dim light that filled the room. The translucent pod was no longer around her. Instead, she lay on a smooth, organic surface that breathed gently beneath her. Strange tendrils of light flickered around her, dancing across the walls and floor in rhythm with her heartbeat. Evelyn lifted a hand to her face, expecting to see the familiar curve of her fingers. What she saw instead sent a chill through her body. Her skin, once pale and soft, had taken on a faint metallic sheen. It shimmered under the lights, the texture both smooth and unnatural. She flexed her fingers, and the movement felt alien, as if they belonged to someone or something else. "What have you done to me?" Her voice, hoarse from disuse, echoed in the empty chamber. But there was no one there to answer. No one but the strange hum that had been with her since the beginning. Suddenly, the door slid open. The alien figures entered, their cold gazes locked onto her as they approached. But this time, they did not look down upon her as a captive. They looked at her with reverence. "You are awake," the first one said, its voice devoid of the previous mechanical coldness. There was something new in its tone, a trace of awe. "You have become one of us." One of them? Evelyn's mind raced, trying to make sense of what was happening. She had been transformed, altered by their experiments, but had she truly become one of them? She looked down at her body again, noting the subtle changes that had taken place. Her muscles felt stronger, her senses heightened, as if she could perceive the very air around her with an intensity she had never known before. But beneath it all, she still felt human. Her mind was intact, her thoughts and memories unchanged. They had altered her body, but her soul, her essence, remained untouched. "You are the first," the second figure said, stepping closer. "The first of a new kind. A union of human resilience and our advanced biology. Together, we shall forge a new future, one where neither species dominates but coexists in perfect harmony." Evelyn's heart pounded in her chest. A new kind, a new race, born from her very existence. She hadn't asked for this. She hadn't volunteered to become their experiment, to be the foundation of some hybrid species. But here she was, standing on the precipice of something far greater than herself. "They will see you as a leader," the figure continued. "Both human and alien. You will guide them, show them the way." "Leader?" Evelyn struggled to process the weight of the words. She had been a scientist, not a leader. Yet, standing before these beings, these creatures who had transformed her, she felt a strange sense of responsibility. If she was the first of a new race, she couldn't abandon them to a fate she didn't understand. She needed to learn, to adapt, to find her place in this strange new world they had created. "I didn't ask for this," Evelyn said, her voice low but steady. "You took me. You made me into this." The figure regarded her for a moment, its eyes glinting with something close to understanding. "No one chooses the path of destiny. But you are stronger than you realize. The new race will thrive under your guidance, just as we have." As the aliens moved back, Evelyn felt a surge of determination rise within her. This was not the end of her story, it was the beginning. She had been forged into something new, something powerful. And while she had not chosen this path, she would walk it with purpose. The hybrid race was born, and Evelyn, once a prisoner, now stood as their leader. The future lay ahead, uncertain and full of peril. But she would face it, not as a victim, but as a force to be reckoned with. The new race spread like wildfire. Across the alien vessels and outposts, whispers of a new kind, neither fully human nor fully alien, began to take root. At first, they were seen as nothing more than an experiment, an anomaly that would eventually fade. But as more hybrids emerged, bred from the union of human and alien genetic material, it became clear that this was no fleeting creation. It was a force, one that could tip the balance of power. Evelyn stood at the heart of it all, watching as the beings she had unwittingly created grew in number and influence. They were stronger, faster, and more adaptable than either humans or aliens alone. And yet, they were outcasts, viewed with suspicion and fear by both sides. The tension had been simmering for weeks, but it was only a matter of time before it boiled over into outright conflict. "Do you see what you've done?" One of the alien leaders, taller and more imposing than the others, stood before Evelyn. Its cold, metallic voice dripped with disdain. "Your kind has brought disorder, chaos. You've upset the balance." Evelyn met the alien's gaze, unflinching. "I didn't ask for this. You made me into what I am. And now you lead them," the alien spat. "They look to you as their leader, their savior. But they are a threat and abomination. They do not belong among us, nor among your people." Evelyn's heart raced. She had known this moment was coming, but she wasn't prepared for how deeply it would affect her. The hybrids, her people, had been born into a world that rejected them. They were a bridge between two civilizations, yet accepted by neither. "I won't let you destroy them," Evelyn said, her voice firm. "They have a right to exist, just as much as you do." The alien's eyes narrowed. "Then you leave us no choice." A shrill alarm echoed through the corridors, signaling the outbreak of conflict. Evelyn could hear the sounds of battle in the distance, the clash of weapons, the shouts of soldiers. The rebellion had begun. The hybrids, though fewer in number, were fighting back. They were no longer content to live in the shadows, to be treated as experiments or outcasts. Under Evelyn's guidance, they had organized, prepared for the day when they would have to defend their existence. And now, that day had come. Evelyn turned away from the alien leader and raced toward the heart of the conflict. The corridors were a blur as she moved, her enhanced body allowing her to navigate the labyrinthine structure with ease. She could feel the tension in the air, the weight of the war that was unfolding. When she arrived at the central chamber, chaos greeted her. Hybrid soldiers clashed with alien forces, the air thick with the acrid smell of burning metal and energy weapons. Bodies littered the floor, both hybrid and alien. The sight sent a surge of anger through Evelyn's veins. "We can't hold them much longer," one of the hybrid leaders shouted as she approached. His voice was strained, his body bloodied from the battle. Evelyn looked around, her mind racing. They were outnumbered, and despite their superior abilities, the hybrids wouldn't last much longer against the alien forces. She needed to make a decision fast. "We retreat to the lower chambers," Evelyn ordered, her voice commanding. "We'll regroup and plan our next move. We can't let them wipe us out here." The hybrid leader hesitated for a moment, but then nodded, his trust in her clear. "Understood." As the hybrids began to fall back, Evelyn couldn't help but feel the weight of responsibility pressing down on her. She had become their leader, but in doing so, she had also led them into war. A war that could end them all. The alien forces pursued relentlessly, their numbers overwhelming. But as Evelyn and the hybrids reached the lower chambers, she realized they had one advantage left: their connection to both sides. "We can't keep running," one of the hybrids said, his voice filled with frustration. "We need to make a stand." Evelyn nodded, but her mind was elsewhere. She was already formulating a plan, a way to turn the tide of the war. They had been created as a bridge between two worlds, and now, that bridge might be their salvation. "There's one way we can end this," Evelyn said, her voice steady. "We need to make them see that we are more than just experiments. We are the future." The hybrids looked at her, uncertainty in their eyes. But they trusted her, just as she had trusted herself to lead them. With a final glance at the battlefield behind them, Evelyn knew what she had to do. The time for hiding was over. It was time to show both the humans and the aliens what the hybrids were truly capable of. The air was thick with tension as the hybrids gathered in the underground chamber, their eyes fixed on Evelyn. They had retreated, but it wasn't defeat that weighed on them, it was uncertainty. The war was far from over, and everyone in the room knew it. The aliens were relentless, determined to eradicate the hybrids. And the humans, scattered across the stars, were still ignorant of what had truly been born out of their species' manipulation. Evelyn stood at the center, her metallic skin shimmering under the faint light. The weight of her role, of what she had become, pressed on her chest, but she didn't waver. This was the moment that would define not only her fate, but the fate of an entire new race. "We can't fight them forever," one of the hybrids said, his voice tinged with frustration. "We're outnumbered, outgunned. We need to strike back now before they wipe us out." Evelyn looked around at her people. They were strong, resilient, but they were also few. Fighting a war of attrition would only lead to their destruction. She needed another way, one that didn't end in more death and bloodshed. "I have a plan," she said, her voice calm but commanding. "But it's risky. We're going to confront them, but not with violence." The room fell silent. Confusion rippled through the hybrids. Confront them without violence? How could that possibly work? "We were created as a bridge," Evelyn continued, her gaze sweeping across the room. "We carry the strength of both species, but we also carry their fears and distrust. If we can show them that we are not a threat, that we are more than what they see, they may listen." "And if they don't?" one of the hybrids asked. "Then we make them listen," Evelyn said, her eyes narrowing. "We don't fight them as enemies. We stand before them as equals." The hybrids murmured among themselves, uncertainty still lingering. But Evelyn's resolve was unshakable. She knew this was their only chance. They couldn't win a war through sheer force, they had to prove their right to exist, not through destruction, but through unity. The hybrid army marched toward the heart of the alien fleet, where the leaders of both species were gathered. It was a sight to behold, creatures that were neither fully human nor alien, walking with purpose, their shimmering forms radiating a power that could no longer be ignored. As they approached the alien command center, the alien forces lined up in front of them, weapons drawn, ready for a final battle. But Evelyn raised her hand, signaling her people to stop. "Let me speak to them," she said, her voice steady. The alien leader, the one who had accused her of bringing chaos, stepped forward. Its eyes glinted with cold distrust, but it didn't give the order to attack. "Not yet." "You've come to surrender?" it asked, its voice dripping with disdain. "No," Evelyn replied, her tone unwavering. "We've come to end this." The leader's expression darkened. "End this? You cannot end what has already begun. Your existence is an affront to the balance of the galaxy. You are neither human nor alien. You are an abomination." Evelyn took a step forward, standing taller, her eyes locked on the alien leader. "You fear us because you don't understand us. But we are more than what you made us. We are the future, your future, and theirs." She gestured toward the human forces standing on the periphery, still watching, unsure of their place in this battle. "We don't want war," Evelyn continued. "We want to coexist. You created us to be something more. And now we're offering you a choice. Accept us, or continue a war that will destroy us all. There was a long, tense silence. The alien leader's eyes flickered, its mind weighing the options. The hybrid forces stood still, waiting for the order that could determine their fate. Evelyn held her breath, her heart pounding in her chest. Finally, the alien leader spoke. You claim to be the future, it said slowly, its voice quieter now. But the future is uncertain. If we accept you, how do we know you won't turn against us? You don't, Evelyn replied. But the same could be said of you. Trust is a choice. And I'm offering you mine. For a moment, it seemed as though the leader might give the order to attack. But then, slowly, it lowered its weapon. The human forces followed suit. One by one, the soldiers lowered their guns, their faces a mix of confusion and cautious hope. The war, it seemed, had come to a standstill. Weeks later, the first steps toward peace had been taken. A fragile alliance had been formed, one that could crumble at any moment, but it was a start. Evelyn stood at the edge of a new world, watching as the hybrids began to take their place in the galaxy, not as outcasts, but as a bridge between two species that had once been at war. She had been their prisoner, their experiment. But now, she was something more. She was their future. As she looked out at the horizon, she knew the challenges were far from over. But for the first time, she felt a sense of hope. The hybrids had been born from violence, but their future would be built on something far greater, the choice to coexist. And that, she knew, was the true beginning.